Welcome everybody, Kat here. I'm glad you joined me today. As you could tell by the thumbnail, I am going to be painting a winter landscape with a sweet little deer in it. To start with, I have my Hahnemühle, or Hahnemühle, I'm not sure how you say it, Expressions paper. It's a good one-layer painting paper. I quite like it. I drew a little deer. I will leave you a drawing at the end, and I traced it onto, this is mac-tac. So instead of using masking fluid for this, I'm just going to use the mac-tac. It's much easier, and it's much more cooperative than than the mac-tac is. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is place my deer. Now I'm not sure exactly where I want it, but you know, I'm not going to be too fussy. So there we go. Good enough. Just coming out of the woods somewhere. You know, maybe I'll regret it and I'll do another painting and move it. But for now, I just want to get this initial part started because this is the longest to take to dry. I'm going to do the background. The colors I'll be using today is turquoise for the very top. And I'm going to be using a homemade Moon Glow, which is a color made by Daniel Smith, but it's fugitive, which means that it doesn't last in any kind of light. It fades, the color. So I decided to make my own with I have emerald green, it's PG7, ultramarine blue, which is PB29, I believe. Yeah, PB29. And I'm using, I think I used Quin Rose, which is PV19. So when you mix those up, you get a shade that you're quite comfortable with, and you use it. And if it's watery enough, it should do some separating on its own, and you can kind of see the different colors that you use to make it. Now, Moon Glow is beautiful, it does that, but as I said, it fades. So I'm going to wet my paper first. This brush is a bit too small, so I'm going to go to my bigger brush. Just very nice and clean water. Wet the paper evenly, and I'm only going to wet down to about the neck of the deer. And you can put him on a hill and come up this way. I think that's what I'm going to do. Just to make it interesting, because he's going to be in snow, so I'm not going to paint there. And the top part, I'm using turquoise. I don't want it to be too dark a sky, but I don't want it to, I need it to be dark enough because we're going to be using salt today. So your sky has to be dark enough in order for you to be able to see the salt effects. Now as we come closer, leave it there, it'll be nice and wet. As we come closer, I'm going to use my mixed color. And I'm going to come right down to that line that I made. And if you want it more green, you use more green. If you want it more blue, you use more blue. There's no wrong way to use this. So right now I'm just slapping it on, painting it on, and I'm going to blend it in a few seconds. So I'm going to mix some more. I'll show you how I do that. Clean your brush. The emerald. Such a beautiful color. I don't know if they call it emerald. I think that's phthalo green in other sets, but this is Paul Rubens, and Paul Rubens has some different names. And this is Quin Rose, which is, PV19. So that means pigment violet 19. And I'm going to use ultramarine, and the reason I'm using that is because ultramarine separates. It's granulating, and that's what I want. I want some separation. So, ooh, yeah, that's beautiful. So you see, you get every time you mix, you're going to get a different color, and that's not wrong. Just, you may want to make enough of that color if you like it, because you know what's going to happen is you're going to try to make it and it won't work. You won't be able to duplicate it. So to make my life easier and your life easier, I'm going to turn my board. I'm going to tilt it towards me, and I'm going to do a blending motion. I'm going to get more paint. And as I said, I want this to be quite dark because I need this to be dark for the salt effects. I think that's dark enough. I'm going to go in with a teeny bit more of my turquoise, just to make sure I have enough. If you're using too small a brush, this is what can happen, is you get some streaks. So it's always better to change your brush if you are, excuse me for having a brain freeze. It's always better to use the size brush that's accordingly to your needs. Took a long time for me to get that out, but it's out now. Okay, so that part's done. Now I'm using very plain table salt. You can use sea salt, but I've had no luck with sea salt. I find it a little bit too big. And so maybe if you had like a finer, like a coarse sea salt, but not as large as I have, then maybe it would work. So I'm sprinkling. I don't know if you can see where my salt is going, but I'm sprinkling all the way down and all across the sky, because what this is going to represent is frost on leaves and growth and stuff. So I want to, wherever this frost is growing, I'm going to be painting in branches later on. So that's why I need the turquoise on the top to be dark enough for you to be able to see. But there are, you can overdo salt. So you have to learn by practice, and part of it's just plain old luck. Now the best way to deal with this now is you don't touch it. You let it dry by itself, and then you turn the video back on and you come and join me. So go get your something warm and cozy to drink and come back and join me as soon as your painting's done. See you soon. Okay, I'm back with this painting. I'm working on 2 videos at the same time, so I hope I don't get too mixed up. So I was going to trash this, and I decided not to because I do love this paper. I don't want to waste it. But I wanted to show you the difference between the salt effects on the turquoise and the salt effects on this mixture of paint that I used. So I suppose this is a lot more staining, and that's why the salt didn't work as well. Also, perhaps it was not wet enough. I think it was, though. I really think, like, this is phenomenal. Every time I use this turquoise, that's the result I get. And it actually looks like little crystals of snow on leaves. It's just beautiful. So I'm going to stay working with this. I'm going to have to use some of my white paint and see where this takes me. So the first thing I want to do is get a relatively thin brush, not my smallest. I'm going to get a size, this is a 2, I believe. I'll use a 2 and a 4. So I'm going to get some nice brown. And this does not have to be a realistic color either, because the background is not realistic. So you could always add your brown to this greeny color, and you can do whatever you like. Before I start that, I am going to see if I can lift some branches and things like that from this color. I'm just curious how it will behave. So yes, I can. See? So that's going to make an enormous difference in my painting. So for one of the trees is going to come from here. So when I work my way up, I'm going to take out this paint right there. See, so sometimes it's good to make not a mistake, but just things don't work out the way you thought they would, and then you learn from them. And there we go. So it can't be that staining because I'm able to lift it quite well. I wouldn't want to rub too hard to see if it gets right back down to the original white of the paper. That's pretty rare anyway. But okay, I'm going to come thicker because this tree is going to come to about here after. So there we have it. Let's black that up. Wonderful. That is wonderful. So I think I'll start with that. I am going to do the same thing over here. But I'm not sure where I want this tree to start growing from. I don't think I want it in the grass here, but we'll see. I'll decide later. So I will put in my first layer of brown. And it's going to come down here. It's going to come from this area here. And don't make your lines straight because don't forget that there's snow kind of covering some of this. So don't be afraid to make your lines squiggly. And try and leave a tiny bit of that faded part showing because then it kind of determines where your light is. Oops. So for now, try to let that dry, that little bit, and go to an even thinner brush. So I'm going to go to my itty bitty brush here. It has green paint on it, so I guess I didn't wash it properly. I'm going to go in with, I'm going to try and get that blob up. I will use clean water. There we go. So back into my brown, and I'm going to do some thinner lines now. So I want it to look like there's some branches in and amongst these leaves here. So sometimes the branches are behind the leaves and sometimes they're in front. Now, because of the salt effects didn't work out as planned, I will have to use some white paint after to help this along. But you'll see how that pans out. Just adding some branches where I see fit. And don't worry if they're not dark enough for you, then you just add darker shade after on top of this one. I wouldn't do too much just yet because sometimes you'd be surprised when you step back from the painting how good it looks the way it is. So I'm just adding some brown into my ultramarine and it makes almost a black. So I'm going to go underneath these branches so that it gives them a little bit of shadow on the one side. You can choose whatever side you like, but once you decide, you have to kind of stick to it. So the light's going to come from here. So when we do the deer after, that will make complete sense. I think I'm going to leave that one alone now. And I'm going to put another one here. And like I said, I'm not sure if I want it to come down here. I can't decide. Jeez. And I have to decide. So to help myself along, I will remove some color and then maybe it'll help me decide. I'll start from here and then work my way from here. And this one, I'm going to put a tiny bit of raw sienna into the brown. Just a bit more. Just so it's a tiny bit different. Dry my brush off. So you can't go too light because of the bluey color underneath, but this could certainly be my first layer. Now I'll go in with the darker brown. I have a bit of a new setup in here, so I'm hoping it works better. So you can see my paint a bit better. I know that, oh boy, I just stuck my hand in. Told you I was having a day. This is the kind of day I'm having. So I'm going to try and scrub that off. If I can't get it off, then maybe the tree is going down there, or no, it's pretty good because I'm going to have gray down here for the snow anyway. Oh boy. So while this is getting worked out, we can add some more in the background, but we will have to use some white paint because, as you see, the salt really didn't take there. So I think I'm going to take a thin brush, dark paint, and I'm just going to so they're not going to be the focal point, but they'll be there. Now, I was going to put a bit of shrubbery looking stuff in here, and I'm not too sure what shape I would like them, because I don't want it to compete too much with this. I just want there to be something down here. So I think I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll come back when I've made a decision. You'll be the first to know. Okay, so what I decided to do was to put in tiny little, like, wispy branches here, and they don't have to be there don't have to be a ton of them. It's just so you think that there's bushes and bramble and things like that around here. So they certainly just do whatever you are comfortable doing. I'm doing kind of like Y shapes. I'm tickling the paper with my brush, that's all. I think that's good enough. As usual, I can get carried away. Now, the hardest thing to do when you're trying to put white on manually is to find a brush that isn't very nice, actually. So I used this brush a long time ago for masking fluid. So it never really recovered because it's kind of a cheapy brush anyway. So I'm going to try and put some snow on with this and see how it goes. So I'm going to get my Dr. P.H. Martin, the bleed proof white. Is this? I'll bring it over here. I'm going to see if I can manage to get some, like if I push the brush downward, if I can get some kind of cool little, like, kind of like that. Because nothing beats the salt. The salt is so beautiful. And as I always say, try not to do anything with too much of a rhythm or order, because that's exactly what your brain wants to do. So your brain wants your hand to do the same thing over and over again. But it's not that nice to look at. Your brain wants you to do it, but it's not really appealing. And on these bushes, I also want to put some snow down here, or frost. This is awfully fun to do. I belong to a few Facebook groups, and I hear people ask, is this really okay if I use some white paint? Oh my goodness. They're actually nervous to use white paint because of they're beginners and they think that they're not supposed to. There's no watercolor police. Okay, I'm going to leave that be, and I'm going to get on to our little darling here. But before I take off the mac-tac, I'm going to choose a nice color for the snow. I don't think I want it to be blue. I'm thinking more of that mauve that I made. It's a mixture of ultramarine blue, and this is called Bright Rose from Shinhan. It's BR12. See, I don't know if I like that or if it's too, maybe I need to gray it up. So the opposite of purple is yellow. So I'm going to go in with a warmer, like I'm going to go in with an orange to try and gray that up. Still pretty purple, isn't it? I quite like that one better though than what I had. So I'm going to just lightly underneath the deer, because I want to have, this is just plain water, I want to have a little bit of shadow where his feet are. Her. Let's say it's her. And the other deer that I'm doing on the other painting that's similar to this is a male because it has antlers. I don't think females ever get the antlers, do they? If you know, tell me, but I don't think they do. So because I'm going to add a little bit here as well, some shadowing, and the tree is going to cast a shadow as well. And this tree too. It's nice and watery, so it's just very subtle shapes in the snow. So it just looks like, and right beneath the feet, they're just a tiny bit darker because they're deeper into the snow. And when I peel this off, that might look a little bit sharp, but I'm going to go, excuse me, like I'm going to soften it. So don't worry about that right now. Just darken it around the feet. The tree shadow needs to be a teeny bit darker. And that's, to me, that's so pretty. Now, along the edge here, I'm just going to add a smidge, like a smidge, just like this. Just so you have some definition in the snow, because snow isn't normally perfectly flat, and they're very, very, very pale. So try to make sure when you're doing snow that you are using really clean water, because you will see it on your paper. Everything shows up on your paper when you don't want it to. You can even dry brush a little bit if you like, but I think I'm going to leave mine right there. There we go. Okay, so in a few minutes I'm going to peel the deer, and then we're going to paint him, her. Okay, we're back, and I'm about to peel off my mac-tac deer. And there we go. We have a nice little cutout. Too bad I can't see the rest of them. But it's good enough. I can figure it out. I will put in, I actually will stick them back on. Okay, so what I did was I went around my mac-tac with a little bit of pencil just so I could see my lines a little better. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I think I'm going to paint the first layer of this little guy in this little gal in Jaune Brillant. And I'm gonna start, her little bum is kind of white, but nothing is as white as that snow. So I'm gonna make sure that it has a color so that it stands out from the snow. And this leg is coming from the other side, so that's white, because the inside of this deer's leg is kind of white, creamy color. And there we have it. So I don't have to do the whole thing in it. So the very next color is that I'm going to use is my burnt sienna. Now in a lot of sets your burnt sienna is going to be more brown. I prefer the more brown burnt sienna than that orangey look. So I'm going to add a teeny bit of brown to it. Whoops, that's not a teeny bit. Are any of you like me? You always add too much, too little, too much, too little? You could do this all day. And before I do that, I'm going to add a bit of raw sienna, because it has a bit of a golden glow to it. So I'm going to put this all over, except for where I have the Jaune Brillant, which is going to play as my white. So if you don't have raw sienna, use yellow ochre. And if you don't have yellow ochre, take a yellow and put some like a purpley in it, or you can put a brown in it. It's kind of a golden color, so. And this ear is brown. This one is not. That one's kind of pinky inside. So the raw sienna I'll do on the face. There. And now for the burnt sienna. So the first layer is going to be, I'm just putting in some color where it's a little darker, and then we're going to go from there after. It's like making a little map for yourself. So it's to give it a bit of color. A bit more. My brush is, this brush holds a lot of water, as I said earlier. That's a lot of brown. It's extremely deceiving, this brush. And a bit more. This is the burnt sienna, so I just am mixing it so it's not so orangey. And so I'm starting to add it where I think it would be darkest. If the light's coming from here, it's going to be dark, kind of behind the face and under here, and this side of the leg. So between the brown burnt sienna and the light burnt sienna, you're going to make all your shadows. There. Those are the darkest. This was a bit unmixed, I think, this right here. There. So I'm going in with the more orangey. I'm running out of room. I always have a very messy palette. And don't be afraid to leave some of the areas without there we go, without some of the light. That nice golden raw sienna showing through. It's beautiful. I'm just going to dab that up. I'm not liking this. It looks too, there we go. And I'm going to do the face last, because what I want to do is I want to get a dark eye in there. It's just to establish the space, like where it is. And then I'm going to leave this dry. I'm going to make this ear pink and brown. So I'm going to take my, I can't remember what color this is. This is alizarin crimson. And I'm going to add some of this to it. That is my brown and burnt sienna, in case it's not showing on the camera. So I'm going to give the face a little bit of shape now. Underneath the eyes. No, I did it again. I went in with the, there. I want it to go in with the burnt sienna, just the orangey part. I'm going to just soften them out. I'm just going to go in with a bit of this darker and do the edges of the legs. Under that face is going to be darker. Under the ear. So now this is the brown ear mixture. And this does not have to be perfect. Everybody knows this is a deer. The mistake I'm making, and I do it all the time, especially when I'm doing a video, is I don't wait for things to dry. And it's because I'm in a bit of a rush. But I shouldn't be, because that's exactly how you goof up. But that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you not to do. Don't go in when your paper's not dry. But this is pretty decent paper. It's behaving quite well, so I think I could get away with it for today. And right on the behind here, it has a little bit of a furry sort of, like, so you could see that one leg is separate from the other. Right about there. So I'm not going to call it what it actually is, but I think that's what it is. I think it's the bum separation. And there we go. It's just so this stands out where the snow is, in the snow, so you can see it. Now I am going to let this dry now. Just adding a little bit of something for the eyes. just going to add a teeny bit of blue onto here for a tiny bit of shadow. Just like that. It's a bit thick. There we go. So let's leave this to dry and I'll be right back. The next thing is, of course, is to play around with this deer until I ruin it. Just kidding. Okay. So once again, I'm going to go in with some burnt sienna and the brown mixture. And in order for something to look round, you have to do things. You have to add shadows. So in the center, because the light is coming from over here, it's going to catch on the round of it of the neck. And it's going to come up here and underneath face. And the kind of the cheek is going to catch the light like it is. And then there's going to be a little bit of a indentation for the eye. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but just you have to give it some shape, or else it's just going to look flat. So we're just trying to make him look around her. I think it's a her. A bit more of that burnt sienna. So on closer look, I think that there's a tail here of some kind. And it's kind of white and it's hard to see, so I'm not sure where to put it. I'm just going to add a little doohickey there. It's not a big deal. Just going to take a bit of darker paint. A bit of brown, dab it in there. And see if that works. And our foot there. Now with the white paint, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a little bit of the white paint to where the feet are. Whoops, that's a blob of paint. Just here and there, and maybe around here. Not entirely, just, you know, like that. And a little bit on the trunk of the trees. Teeny bit darker around the eyes here. And the nose. There. I'm going to go around the ear with some white over here. And the pink on the inside of the ear. Okay, so that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video and that you give it a try. And if you did, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. It really makes a big difference if you do that, and it gets the videos out to more people, and you'll be notified of any new ones that I make. And if you care to leave me a comment, I love hearing from you, so don't be shy. Happy watercoloring. Bye bye.